So we are celebrating the anniversary of the building. It's had an interesting history insofar as it's a church building that has been moved twice. They needed a church over here in Haney, or Maple Ridge, and in 1882, with permission of the bishop, the Reverend Gilbert oversaw the moving of the church to a new location at Laity and River Road here. And then 100 years later, when the foundation was crumbling, the wooden foundation, it was either move it or lose it. So with the help of the military from Chilliwack, they rolled the old building on logs to this new location where it is right now.
When the idea starts to float around that we're going to have an 150th anniversary, several other churches claim to have the oldest church in BC. So I did some research. St. John's in Derby was 1859, but there was a St. John's in Yale a year later, 1866. And good old St. George's over in Fort Langley didn't start till 1900. So St. John's is the oldest church in BC. Well, I think when I read what was written of that time, it was a very tough call. Derby, where the church was built, was a pretty rough town. And Crickmer shows drawings of it that it was pretty ramshackle and a pretty rough-looking place. And I think that Mr. Crickmer had a really tough time getting people to come into his brand new church. I know that because he wrote home to his British counterparts. In a letter he says, "The one unifying thing amongst my parishioners is they all come heavily armed." They would sit in church with pistols and knives sticking out their belts. To get people to come to church, he would take a small boy with a brass bell, and the boy would run around town ringing this bell. And when he got enough people's attention, Crickmer would jump up on a rain barrel and preach from up there. But he wouldn't give up. He kept on going. And sad to say that the people of Derby were starting to move to Queensborough, and the gold rush was further up the river. And so Derby kind of fell to pieces. And dear old St. John's was left idle for 20 years. So Mr. Gilbert decided that he needed a church over here.
St. John the Divine is the oldest church building on the whole of the mainland of the province, and as I said, the most moved. So to have that building in this community helps to put Maple Ridge on the map. We don't have that many really older buildings in the province, and so to have this here and in good condition, and for it not to be a museum, but to actually be housing a dynamic congregation, that is a real asset.
My role was to make sure that everybody was doing their role. I was sort of the overseer for both days, for the open house and for Sunday, just to make sure that everybody... I didn't actually have a lot to do on the Sunday, which was very nice.
It was kind of a highlight in my ordained ministry. I have served longer as an ordained person in this parish than anywhere else, and this was probably the most special service that I've ever been part of, to have the bishop and the other dignitaries present, and so much effort that went into it. I felt very honored to be the rector in this place at that particular point in time.
The open house day was a lot of fun, because Charles and I were dressed up in uniform with the top hats and the whole bit, and we had a really, really great day. Then the next day, the big Sunday service. I could tell you that this church has never seen such a rich and colorful service.
I was really super pumped up.
And for me, the exciting part was walking down those steps to meet the governor, Stephen Point, and his wife, the bishop was there, and Ernie Dakin and his wife were there. I was awash with dignitaries, and I was so excited. And my job was to escort the governor and his wife to their seats at the front of the church, you see. So I did that. I announced him from the door. And the whole service went really, really well. You know, because there's a million details putting a thing like this together. And everything went right. A miracle it was. And I was so excited. For 3 days, I was in a daze. For 3 days, I didn't touch the ground. It was really exciting.
And the service was just, the singing was just fantastic. You know, the singing was just great. Not just the choir, but the whole, before the service started, and actually people commented to me afterwards about how they thought it was just, the singing throughout the whole service was just magnificent. So. In the fall, we went out on a shopping spree and we bought lots of material and all the accessories, and then patterns, and then we encouraged people either to make their own. It was a combined effort, and the hats too. So yeah, we just encouraged everybody to do that, to dress up.
It was a very joyful, happy service. A lot of people mentioned how deeply moved they were by it. And one of the things that moved them the most, I think, was the Lieutenant Governor, the Honorable Stephen Point, at the end had some comments when he was sharing about his own personal life and how someone had encouraged him to come back to church on a couple of occasions. He had a special encounter with someone that really brought him back to the church. And it was so nice for the people, especially younger people, to hear a prominent man such as our Lieutenant Governor say about the importance about the spiritual life, and that he took it up. And to have that as part of an anniversary service was very moving testimony.
When we knew the Lieutenant Governor and his wife were coming, we were all very nervous that we would have everything right, and protocol had to be just so, and we were extremely nervous, and how delightfully surprised we were when we found how open and easygoing he was. But I think the thing that moved us most of all was his talk at the end of the service, when we just sat there, I'm sure with our mouths open, listening to him, how he had come back to church, what had led him back, and obviously a man of deep faith too. And that really, because we didn't know and we were really worried about that really touched me very much, and a lot of other people.
We borrowed people from other churches. The deacon came from another church, I forget which one right now, and the lunch was all served by churches, people from other churches, St. Catherine's, I think, all served lunch. The vicar was there too. He was serving lunch. Oh, it was impressive. Oh yeah. Sometimes when you do a job for the church, some of the parishioners don't always want to participate, you know. You have to twist a few arms to make them join in. Boy, they outdid themselves. The craft group at work meets on Mondays. They were busy making dresses and hats for the ladies, and they all wore them. And in fact, when I stood up front and looked back at the church was a sea of color. All these people dressed in costume. I'd never seen it before. It was so exciting. When something needs doing, needs paint, or needs a new roof, or some construction job, they always come through and get it done. The original underneath all of that is maple. And apparently, to the preachers of that time, the maple was starting to look pretty shabby. The place was looking like it was going to fall down. So they got two local people who volunteered, and they covered the whole thing with cedar planks. They did a beautiful job.
We have inherited a wonderful treasure in our faith, which of course leads people like William Burton Krippner to be a pioneer of the church in this part of the country. And we continue to be a church on the move. Even though the church is older and it's had a noble history, we would want people to know that we continue to make history as we continue to be relevant to the people of our time, as we continue to bring the faith to people who haven't known about our Lord, and help them to enjoy the blessedness that we share of the fellowship here. And so that we want to make a difference continue to want to make a difference in our community, and work alongside other churches to raise the quality of life in this province, and show God's love and care to people locally and around the world.
And it was a day when you felt that you were part of history. This was an historic event, and we were part of it. It was just so exciting.
I found the whole service was very moving, a bit overwhelming. I just thoroughly enjoyed the whole service and the lunch afterwards, and yeah, felt very good. The whole weekend, I think, was a message how well we work together. That's really at the end of the weekend. We couldn't have made it such a success unless we all worked together really well. So.
Well, it's 150 years old, and as a matter of fact, I said to the governor as we came up the steps, I said, "You must be used to this kind of pomp and circumstance." And he said, "No, there ain't that many churches that are 150 years old." So, that's right. So it was significant. And fortunately, when the church was built in 1859, the original rector, William Burton Crickmer, he was a good record keeper, and he was an artist. He drew sketches of what Derby looked like, what the church looked like. And so we have a record of that. And I'd like to think 50 years from now, people will look at our recordings and say, that's what it looked like 50 years back. You know, this is what we got to compete with.
I'd like them to still be aware of the history of the church and be aware that it's been a functioning church for all these years. I really would like them to know that it's still, I'm hoping that it's still going to be functioning, and that, you know, they'll look back and say, yes, we've had this going for 200 years. And it's important to keep it going another 200 years. Right.
I was delighted. One of the things that delighted me was that my son, David, was able to be here with his girlfriend on that occasion. And also my father, who's been a lifelong churchman, was visiting from Peterborough, Ontario. And so to have them here as part of that service meant a great deal to me. And so for many, many reasons, it was a very, very special occasion.
This church has become my life. I joined this church. Boy, they load me up with work, boy. I've always got something to do. Yeah, I think the reason it's lasted so long is that because everyone is knitted together, you know.